Hi, welcome to Onward Shifts podcast. Today we have one of our own coaches on the show with us, Stuart Blake, and he's one of the career coaches. He's an absolute expert in the industry with 30 years experience. So hi Stuart, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Vish. Thank you. You can see I did have hair when I started in the recruitment sector and working careers. So great introduction.
That's all right. I think we're all losing a bit of hair, to be fair. Um, but no, I'd love to get started with understanding a bit more about what you did before becoming a careers coach, and just what your past was, please.
Okay. So I was born and brought up in Herefordshire. Had a love in particular for cricket. I played cricket all over the world. Worked in financial services, and then I came back to Herefordshire. I'm not sure why I came back to Herefordshire really, but I came back and I worked with the local authority doing a role that included or involved some of my financial services experience. And I met my now wife, and she got a job in London, so I decided to move to London with her. And I applied to do recruitment with a guy called Robert Walters, and successfully joined them. Now, a number of years later, Rob used to successfully run career evenings for accountants with his then co-director David Rives, and they were running a panel session a few years later, and they described me going in for my first interview. So they kind of said, there's a guy at the back you should meet. He runs this team, and actually, when we hired him, it was a bit of a joke because he was from this sort of place miles away from Hereford, and he came in a light grey suit and he didn't really know what it was all about, and I didn't, But I spent 8-9 years with Rob. I sat a couple of seats away from Rob. It was great training. It was at the point where recruitment was quite young. And Rob's business philosophy was you had to focus on all aspects of relationship building. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't just building a relationship with the recruitment companies, the clients, but your candidates were critical to your personal success and the success of the fees that you make. And it was a brilliant grounding. It wasn't easy. We went through a couple of pretty tough recessions, but it was really good fun. I opened a couple of offices with him. I had many Friday afternoon meetings with him where you weren't sure whether you would be back on a Monday when things were tough. But that was the way the sector was in the mid-late 80s. From there, I moved. So in 1992, unfortunately, I was made redundant during the 1992 recession. And these are some of the things that people don't necessarily understand. So I went on a cricket tour, let's say March, April time, 1992. And we were working on probably 100, 150 jobs in the Thames Valley. I came back 3 weeks later, no jobs, and made certain changes. And I was really lucky. I did loads of interviews, and was asked to go for an interview via an ex-colleague at a business called Harrison Willis, which was another financial recruiter, and spent many years with them. It was great fun. We grew the business. I went from consulting to managing to regional manager to regional director to managing director of Harrison Willis. We floated it on the stock exchange, which was fun for some. We just had to do the numbers, and we did that. And it was good experience. And being in that structured environment was good experience.
So it sounds like you've been on a massive journey, haven't you? You started at the bottom and you've worked your way up, and even helped get a company onto the stock exchange. It sounds like you've been on a massive journey in recruitment yourself over plus years.
So when did I move back? In 2012. So it would be 30 years, 25, 28 years, something like that.
Wow.
But it's not all great. It's and I think that and I'm very critical of the recruitment sector now, but I don't think unfairly. But I do think that it's important that people understand the challenges of being a recruiter. Okay, you're not selling one product to one person.
Hmm.
You're consistently selling a concept to two people. So you're talking to a candidate about a possible job. You're talking to a client about a possible candidate,
Hmm.
and they're humans, and humans will inevitably change their minds.
Yeah.
So it is always challenging. And, I was very lucky to, on paper, I suppose, be worth a lot of money. I
Mm.
think I made some decisions, and subsequently, um, subsequent owners of the business that I'd invested in made decisions that meant that money frittered away.
Hmm.
And I didn't respond to that very well. So up until 2008, 2009, it was great.
Hmm.
No, probably less than that. 2006, 2007, 2008 banking crisis. Um, and I then plumped put all my money on red, and it didn't go red. And it created a challenging vacuum, which makes me more empathetic,
Hmm.
generally, but more
What would
empathetic about the challenges that people will go through.
what would you say are some of the biggest challenges in the recruitment industry, like as a recruiter and as a candidate? Because I know I've been in a position of being a candidate for a recruitment, like to get recruited, and it's quite a what's the right word? It's quite a boisterous, I'd say, environment because putting your names out there, that is it. It's game over. It is phone call after phone call, and then all of a sudden, it seems like the second one agency starts contacting you, all of them do, and your phone doesn't stop.
Well, yeah, I think let's take it from the job seeker perspective, because I think as a job seeker today, there is a danger that we are signposted to almost abdicate responsibility of our job search to job boards and recruiters.
Hmm.
So what you will tend to see, people go through training processes or education, and download this template, infill the information, upload your CV to X job board and Y job boards, and guess what? Everything will be fine. Well,
Mm.
actually, everything isn't fine, because sitting behind that job board are various algorithms that may or may not work well for you. And
Hmm.
if they were great, then when I put in career coach into one of the larger job boards, I wouldn't be getting jobs on a Friday afternoon for a coach driver in Kent.
Mm.
I never have worked in Kent. I'm unlikely to start working in Kent now, and I've never driven a coach. So guess what? It's a waste of my time to receive that. But you will be receiving that. People are receiving that on a daily basis.
Mm.
So they become disengaged with the process of looking for a job, because actually what it's delivering me is a significant amount of just rubbish.
Mm.
On the other side, of course, if you are getting responses via job boards, online responses can tend not to be people.
Mm.
So I have numerous conversations where people will say, Brian called me about my application, and you'll say, well, so what did Brian say? And it's a standard AI response. So again, it's that point of frustration around who do I communicate with to ensure that I'm ahead of the game. From a recruiter perspective, I think that generally recruitment consultants are letting candidates and job seekers down. I think the
Mm.
service offering is poor now. There is a subliminal difference when you're recruiting between filling a job and placing a candidate.
Yeah, I like that. That's really interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so filling a job is, I've got my KPIs to hit. I need to send as many CVs to this as possible. Otherwise, I'll have somebody moaning at me. So I'll
Hmm.
send 10, 20 CVs to this person, and I've ticked my box, and away we move on.
Hmm.
Placing a candidate is, I've seen this person, they're brilliant. We've talked through what they want to do and what they don't want to do. And I'm going to pick up the phone to 20, 30, 40 companies, and describe this person. Now,
Mm.
and that would be the traditional way. Clearly, I said to you before we started this, so I'll share it again. I was a slightly lazy recruiter. There were things I hated doing. So
Mm.
cold calling, I loathed. It just didn't do it for me. But I could write really good mail shots.
Hmm.
Okay, so you know, almost embracing an inner American momentarily. You go as high up the chain as possible, the decision-making chain, and what you send somebody resonates with that person. There has to be a reason why you're sending that information to the person, but you're looking to place the candidate. And go back to 1986, 87, if you didn't know your candidates within the Robert Walters business, and if you didn't stay in touch with your candidates, that was just one of the worst things that you could ever do. So it was almost inbred for me that you had to do those things. So I find it really frustrating for people nowadays that say, and I've experienced it, I spoke to so-and-so and they've never come back to me. But I would have thought that if you're working with 20 candidates and you can sift to get 20 candidates that you can place as a recruiter, and you place 4 of them a month, you'll be exceeding your target, as people did 30 years ago. I think people aren't necessarily distilling the quality of candidates, or focusing on actually the sale part of the process. Sorry.
Interesting to hear your perspective on how the recruitment industry has changed over the years. But I guess one of the key things we need to talk about is the transition here. You went from recruitment into coaching, and I know we've spoken before about this quite a few times. And for me, what really kind of inspired me to speak to you more is how passionate you are about genuinely helping people get from point A to point B. And I'd love to know, why is it that you went from a recruitment industry to personalized coaching in helping people get their dream jobs, I guess?
One of the things that I think that I was quite good at when I was recruiting, managing, being a director of businesses, was that I took great pride in supporting people so that they could achieve their aspirations. And I was one of those unusual people where if somebody walked in and said to me, God, that guy Stuart Blake isn't making his numbers, we're going to have to lose him, I would be almost the opposite. So I would be saying to directors, you hired them, make them work. I'm not going to make that, no, I'm not going to authorize that because you've hired the person. So give them the support to make them succeed. And lots of people criticize me for being the person that would give people longer to achieve and longer to succeed. Many people saw that as a weakness. But I came to a point within the recruitment journey where the parts that I enjoyed doing were supporting either the recruiting business or the candidate to achieve their goals. The part that I didn't enjoy was, I've just got a job from X company. I know they've gone to 2 or 3 agencies. I know that the other agencies are going to be firing in, probably 40 CVs, and it's a race. I'm too old to race. I probably haven't got the physique to race. So racing wasn't high on the agenda, but I enjoyed the people aspect of supporting people to achieve their goals. And initially did an executive coaching qualification. Then I did the career coaching qualification. Then I did the life coaching qualification, and then a confidence coaching qualification, but all with the same goal. And I think we said just before we started the podcast that at the end of the final kind of ICF qualification, people asked the lead coach what they charge per hour. And you could almost hear, it reminded me of one of my old directors that used to have a calculator all the time with him, and all you'd hear was the clicking of the numbers. He would be analysing numbers all the way through board meetings. And it was like everybody was saying, oh, I can charge X an hour or Y an hour, or it's just brilliant, look at this. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And almost, if that's your business model, that's fabulous. For me, it was slightly simpler. For me, it was saying, I know there are swathes of people globally who can't access the sort of support they need to achieve their goals, have barriers to achieve their goals that can be overcome if they're mentored and coached by somebody, or get into a rut and can't see their way out of a rut. Okay, so for me, the coaching piece, it remains about delivering coaching to the broadest possible audience, and delivering 35 years of highs and lows, and knowledge-based, if we're talking about career coaching, but knowledge-based career coaching to
Hmm.
people, because I think sometimes, and I got this wrong, and I think I said this to you when we met. So sometimes people believe that your coach has to have a perfect background.
Hmm.
And I went to my CEO when I set up the coaching business and said, "Would you give me a testimonial?" He said, "Yeah, absolutely." And I thought it would just be kind of, he was wonderful. There's his halo. He did a great job for me. And actually, what he said was, working with Stuart will be brilliant because he's achieved real highs and real lows. So he can give you a real balanced view. Coupled with his knowledge, he can give you a real balanced view of how to achieve your goals. And initially, I was really disappointed with that. But then thinking about it,
Hmm.
it's kind of logical.
Yeah.
If you haven't experienced those lows, if you
Hmm.
haven't if you haven't had to turn around and say to people or say to yourself, right, come on, let's get going, let's get working, then, and if you're not willing to share that as part of somebody else's journey,
Hmm.
then it's very difficult for you to help somebody
Hmm.
break out of a rut.
Absolutely. And I think that's a really key thing to focus on when you're in coaching is actually understanding that the person you are coaching, they could well be going through this really low and they don't actually know how to get out of it. Or they could be on this really high and unfortunately that high isn't getting them anywhere. So then they're going to start deteriorating. And I think that's a really good point to talk about is that what are the pros of, say I'm a candidate and I want to be coached by yourself. Now, what are the pros for me?
I focus everything, or I focus on building a foundation. And the foundation that I look to build with everybody is a foundation of um, key achievements, points of difference, and confidence. Because everybody has achievements. The reason that people are
Hmm.
reluctant to talk about achievements now is because of social media. So if I put on social media that, you know, that I did 5 tours to Barbados, somebody will said, I did 12. So then you don't post it again. If kids do
Mm.
well at something, they don't post it for fear of somebody, either belittling them or beating them down. Okay. So lots of people from a lot of backgrounds don't recognize when they have achievements.
Hmm.
And those achievements ultimately become their points of difference. So as you're planning your career route, understanding what your points of difference are really, really important. But by focusing on those points where we can build the foundation of confidence, okay, we can then either enhance somebody's feeling about themselves significantly,
Hmm.
or if they're on a high and they know they're doing well, keep referring back to those points so that they can continue with their journey.
Hmm.
Building confidence and building an understanding of where somebody's at and what they're looking to achieve, what their aspirations are, and go through those aspiration matrix are really, really important.
Mm. That's
Uh,
really interesting. Yeah.
because everybody has achievements.
Hmm.
Coming back to what we were saying before we started about CVs, but when you're in a system which makes you fire something into a template
Hmm.
um, that you believe is the only answer. So I must write a personal profile. That personal profile must be 8 or 9 lines. It's got to say I can work well as an individual or part of a team. It must say that I'm a team player. It must say that I'm hardworking. Well, yeah, everybody writes that. So guess what? No, it mustn't say that. What it must say is why somebody's going to recruit you. And if you don't know your
Mm.
points of difference, if you don't know your achievements, you're never going to be telling somebody why somebody should recruit you. So
And
it's all interlinked.
do you find like I remember when I was recruiting for the coaches, I got something like 150 CVs, maybe even more than that. And I actually found so many of those CVs were like AI built. And it was unbelievable. Honestly, you could actually read somebody who's wrote their CV and someone who's just jumped onto like ChatGPT or whatever and gone, write me up a CV. And then they've just slightly tweaked it. And you just go, oh God.
Yeah, and the sad thing about that, of course, is that you can direct certain AI systems to write you a personalized CV. So
Hmm.
so it's actually worse than you say, because not only have they just said write a CV, what they haven't done is directed the AI system to
Absolutely.
write exactly what they want. So not only is it lazy, it's extremely lazy because they haven't gone through the process, and which
Absolutely.
is even worse. But we've got to look at the source of that. Okay,
Hmm.
so if we think about, again, education, if we think about training, if we think about job boards, they all just come out with the same thing.
Hmm.
So personal profile, 8 lines of whatever key skills. Are they skills?
Hmm.
Is being diligent a skill? I don't think.
Hmm.
Getting to work on time, is that a skill? I'm not sure it is.
That's a good point.
You
I remember putting that on my CV considerable amount of
know,
times.
you know,
Hardworking, dedicated, and I turn up.
so you know, so I'm not sure that key skills piece. Because you've almost got. If we all agree, and it's written all over the world, people write. You've got 7 to 10 seconds for somebody to look at your CV.
Hmm.
Okay, but in 7 to 10 seconds, if you've read 8 lines saying he's a really nice bloke that delivers Meals on Wheels and walks his dogs and coaches football, that has no bearing on going in as a CTO of a tech company. And then it
Hmm.
has key skills that say, he's a good communicator and whatever. But those 7 seconds are consumed reading nothing that's going to make you want to recruit that person. And almost worse still, from a recruiter's perspective, and you've recently been through this, if you get 100 CVs on a Monday morning, and you might have a great CV, which is number 20, but it starts I am a, and you just go, oh no, sorry,
Yeah.
I'm done with that opening.
Yeah.
because
Absolutely.
because you go word blind to the same stuff.
And
Um,
that's I found personally. Like I'd read maybe a few an hour, and then I'd have to walk away, and then come back to it, and then walk away, and then come back to it. And that's why the recruitment process does take a long time. Because if you've got to do that over 100 CVs, that's going to take a lot of your time up. And when you consistently read the same thing over and over again, you're kind of like, oh my god, use a
because
different
what
platform.
ultimately, sorry, Vish, ultimately, what an
No, of
employer is looking
course.
for, okay,
Hmm.
they're looking for something that catches their eye.
Absolutely.
Okay, so they're either looking for something around commonality,
Hmm.
okay, or they're looking for an achievement where they say, hey, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, and
That.
it's simple as that. And I worked with a lady 2 years ago, and she wanted to work in healthcare,
Hmm.
and she was lovely, and she was struggling. And when you got to know her, you just couldn't work out why she was struggling. And
Hmm.
she'd moved to the UK and passed. And prior to moving to the UK, every day she'd walked 15 miles to go and get food and water for her family. It wasn't on her CV.
Mm.
And she wanted to work in healthcare. So I kind of said, let's ignore everything that's been written for you in the past. Let's put a line through that.
Yeah.
Let's start with that point. Because why am I going to recruit you into a healthcare environment? Because you're
Mm.
caring, or you're walking 15 miles a day to get food and water. Empathy, the same principles apply, and all those things. So it's thinking through those things that resonate with you, or those points of commonality when you're applying for a job. So
Yeah.
so if I go back to where we were talking about the recruitment process, if you can either abdicate responsibility for your job search to third parties, or you can start to control your job search. You can write your own CV, as we said. You can target organizations that resonate with you, or business leaders that resonate with you, or you can wait.
Hmm.
Getting the call from a recruiter, then guess what? You're going to be waiting a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another question that I think can go on to is, at what stage do you think a client should start thinking about, okay, I really do need some help. What stage should they reach out to a careers coach?
I don't think there's a I don't think there's a right stage.
Hmm.
Again, I think we're looking at almost two groups, aren't we? So we're looking at people that are looking for employment today for a variety of reasons.
Hmm.
So I think that if you've been looking for a job, and I saw something online the other evening where you shouldn't be reactively looking for a job over that first month. So if you're not getting success in your
Hmm.
job search at whatever level of experience you've got, I think you should be talking to a third party.
Okay.
I think you should be talking to a career coach, or you should be talking to some sort of mentor that can help you
Hmm.
understand your goals, understand the plan that you're going through, and support you in achieving those goals. I think that's really, really important, because all you're going to do is get more disillusioned and disengaged with the process of seeking a new role.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think that's the one side of the almost the career coaching, the job coaching, employability piece. I think the other piece is, if you're in a role and you feel as though you're starting to stagnate, or you're not getting the recognition that you deserve, is working with somebody so that you can enhance your personal brand alongside creating a plan that will enable you to seamlessly move into or take on more responsibility.
Mhm.
One of the interesting things about managing staff is that we tend not to promote them or give them extra responsibility when they're on the up curve.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody has a new job, they have their 6 months getting into it, they have their 6 months where they're adding value, then 12 months where they're making their money back for you or achieving what they need to do within the role. And then there comes a point where they start to stagnate, probably between 18 months and 2.5 years into a job. Businesses don't recognize that, generally speaking. Okay. What they recognize is the reduction in performance,
Mm-hmm.
or the lack of motivation. And then we give people extra responsibility or we promote them when they're on the down curve.
Mm-hmm.
So they're feeling bad about themselves because they've hit the peak and started to regress. And then somebody throws them more responsibility,
Mm-hmm.
and they're already in a negative mindset. So actually, there's a responsibility for us as the employee, as well as the employer, to be saying, when we have appraisals, when we have reviews, right, look, I'm doing a great job now, or I'm starting to get a little bit tired of the process, or I'm starting to stagnate. Is there anything we can do about enhancing my role? Or, is it time to start considering whether this is the right role for me? Because if you have that sort of relationship with your employer, then guess what? You can, they're going to elongate your period within the organisation. So they're going to get the added benefit. And you're going to get what you want. But too often it goes beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're in that situation, there's a real importance around having a career coach.
That's
Help turn, because if you go into the process of looking for a job
mm-hmm.
on the down curve in a negative mindset, it's really difficult to drag yourself out of it.
Mm-hmm.
When staying might be the right thing to do.
That's really interesting. So would you say that when you're at your lowest, you should have already be seeing a coach? So basically, once you realise you're starting to decline in that motivation and determination, that's exactly when you need to go, okay, I need some help, I need some guidance, let's go reach out to a careers coach.
Absolutely. But equally, I think businesses need to recognise that with their staff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And therefore, as I would recommend all businesses, as part of their, I suppose, their employee packages, they should have some coaching or mentoring available, which isn't judgmental.
Yeah.
Not like, Stuart, go and have coaching with Brian, and Brian runs back to your boss saying, Stuart's a bit hacked off now. Ooh, careful. There's got to be this confidentiality, and there's got to be this approach whereby we're all working towards the same goal.
Yeah.
And the goal is, a motivated member of staff that is delivering consistently, and a business that's benefiting from that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think through the process, there's your responsibility, but there's also your employer's responsibility, which almost comes back to when we're going through the process of looking for a job. What is important? You've got to write, as well as the plan, you've got to write down what aspirationally is important for you.
Yeah.
Is culture important? Is vision important? Those sorts of things.
And I think there's the holistic approach to careers coaching, right? But there's also that approach where you kind of do need to kind of give people a real push to support them in a way where, yes, you can be aligned. Yes, you can have your vision and your goals and your dreams, but you also need to put the work in. Otherwise, all your visions and all your goals won't actually get you anywhere. But that's where a careers coach will come in perfectly, because they can look at the holistic approach, but they can also support you and push you in the right direction to actually get going with it.
Yeah, and I think, again, I suppose, I think it was about, was it pre-COVID? I think pre-COVID, it was coming towards the end of the year, and I'd finished a contract, and I wanted a bit more cash for Christmas. And there became the two choices. You can do nothing and have not the extra cash, or you can just go and do something. So I went and did something. I went and worked for in a farm shop for 3 weeks before Christmas, and it gave me an extra 300-400 quid.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I made that choice because the choice was clear. It was do something or don't earn any money.
Mm-hmm.
But what it didn't take was a holistic process to get me there.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, having a holistic approach is important. Or let's put it as an empathetic approach. Having an empathetic and caring approach to any coaching environment is really important. Engaging,
Mm-hmm.
caring, empathetic, confidential, really, really important.
Yeah.
But what that shouldn't stop you being able to do is say to somebody, those expectations aren't achievable. That you should be able to say to somebody, look, if you don't follow these 3 or 4 paths, then we'll be in the same position in 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
So if you don't tick these boxes, then you're not going to achieve the initial goal that you have to achieve for overall success. And not everybody agrees with me on that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's easier for me because I have a recruitment background. So it's less likely that I'll let somebody run down a sort of rabbit hole of going nowhere fast, because neither of us are going to achieve what we're going to achieve if that's the route we take.
That's spot on, because I think a lot of people put all this effort in to, let's say, a perfect CV, and then they actually just sit on it. And like you said before, they'll just put it on a platform and expect the platform to do the work for them. But really, they need to be reaching out to companies. They need to be, I think like what you did in your earlier days, go to, the decision makers and send them the CV with a really nice cover letter explaining to them why they're the perfect fit for that company. I think that's really important. But there's something that's always kind of been a question on my mind, and that's the grieving process. Like, when you leave a job, I know I've left many jobs in my life, but I've never allowed myself to actually go, I'm sad. Like, there's people I've built amazing relationships with who I still talk to, 15 years down the line. But there's things that I put my heart and soul into, projects that I did, and all of the rest of it. Do you feel like when you leave a job, for whatever reason, you should allow yourself a grieving process, or is it me being a bit soppy?
No, I don't think you're being a bit soppy at all. I think that if you engage fully in an organisation, and if you align fully with the values and the goals and of that organisation, and if you have strong relationships with people, there is going to be a grieving process. But I think that makes working alongside somebody that can hold your hand through the process even more important.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I look at my CV, not unsurprisingly, after 2 lengthy jobs, I then had 2 short stays with organisations. So I kind of did 8 or 9 years with Walters, and I think I did over 10 years with or nearly 10 years with HW and TMP. So nigh on 20 years with 2 organisations. And then you have a number of, one could say, mistakes, because you haven't gone through that grieving process, that formal process of considering what you should be doing, where you should be doing it, not necessarily giving it the formal thought that you need to get it right. And then it just becomes exacerbated, because then you make a mistake and then you hit that negative point again.
Yeah.
So I think it's really interesting. One thing I was going to say, which kind of bridges over the top of all the topics, but certainly the topic up until your last question, was assumption. We're really good at assuming, and it's a really dangerous word. Okay, so I assume that I shouldn't apply for that job because I'm just not going to be good enough. Have I got the experience to get that job? I'm going for an interview, but guess what? I don't think I'm good enough. I'm not going to apply to Microsoft or Google because guess what? I've looked and there are no jobs. That's all assumption. That's not based on anything other than it's not having the mindset to be proactive. How do we know that those companies aren't recruiting? We don't. Because there'll be resignations today. Where are we? We're on the 20th. So we're running into 21st. So we're running into when people get paid now. So anything between now and let's say the 5th of September, you'll have resignations. Unless people are on quarterly bonuses that get paid at the end of September, you'll have a certain number of people will resign. But we won't know who they are. And the job seekers will sit down and say, no, I won't write to Onward Shift because they're not hiring. How do you know? There's no jobs online. So we're a little bit like we're going into an interview on the back foot. I'm not going to be good enough for this job. Okay, why don't turn up then?
Yeah,
they clearly have seen your CV. So let's plan your interview around that CV. I'm going for an internal promotion. I won't get it. Well, we've all got time to waste, haven't we? So assumption is really dangerous. So again, when you're coaching, part of the role is to take those assumptions and counter them with fact.
And I think the last, sorry, I know quite short for time, but there's two more questions I had for you, if that's okay.
Of course.
One of the questions is, let's say you get a job and you're not 100% happy with the job. Should you ever decline a job? Should you go through the interview process, the applications, all the hardship of it, you actually get down to it, and should you ever turn around and go, actually, this isn't right for me, or should you just go, all right, I'll give it my best shot and see what happens? What's your...
No, you should absolutely reject the job.
Really?
It's a two-way process, job seeking. As much as you've got to be right for the organisation you join, they've got to be the right organisation for you. If you're saying to me, or if you were saying to me, should I take a job and still look for a job? That's a reasonable consideration. But then there's a timing issue. Because you may continue looking for a job. But if you leave the job after 12 weeks, then people are going to think they failed their probation. Okay. But there's a needs must at the end of the day. If you need a job and you take a job that isn't your key, isn't your dream job, but it makes you current and you're working, then that bridges a gap for you. And you can explain that at interview. Okay. But I don't believe somebody should take a job that clearly isn't right for them. That is going to create more mental health challenges and challenges around confidence, or as many as continuing with the job search. Unless, as I say, you've been long-term unemployed, you've got financial struggles, and therefore you take a job and you continue looking for your dream job.
That makes complete sense. So it's kind of balancing out what's going to best suit your lifestyle at a moment of time. And absolutely. I guess the last question I've got for you today, Stuart, is could you leave us with maybe a free bullet point of what people should do when they're looking for work, like 3 helpful tips for those people who are seeking jobs at the moment?
Okay, so I think having a plan to start with. So having a plan that you can reflect on and review and change is really important. Okay. And part of that plan being proactive and not reliant on third parties. Really important. I think having a sales document or sales documents, your CV, that truly represent you and properly represent you based upon almost the question around, would I recruit this person if I saw their CV? Does this CV include my points of difference and my achievements? Are there any areas of commonality between me and the companies that I'm applying for that I haven't included on my CV? So a CV that properly represents you. And the third element, it revolves around research and the interview process. And we haven't really touched on that, but I'll be really brief. So foundation of confidence, key achievements, when you get to the interview stage, can influence the direction of travel of an interview. Because if you see somebody that's a great coach and has got great experience, then what you want to talk about is that great experience. So you will focus in on those achievements. So if you have an achievement-based CV, which is early enough in your CV, and you've done the research on the company and the sector and the people that are interviewing you, then all you've got to focus on is you. And you're never going to get an answer wrong. Because if you're talking about you and you're telling the truth, then the answers are always going to be heartfelt and they're never wrong. They may not be what the employer wants to hear, but you can go in confidently and say, I'm not going to get that element of the interview wrong because I'm talking about me. And that creates the confidence.
So planning is one of the key things, and then interviewing skills,
self-documentation, research.
That's a really good topic. I think we can briefly touch on actually. What would you say good research is? Because I know, go the old-fashioned way is, check out their website. Now more check out their socials, research a bit on the hiring manager. It could be like, the HR person or the CEO or whoever it is that's hiring. Is there any other things that candidates can do to research the company they're going for?
Clearly now people will say, I go onto the platform and look at reviews. Well, that's kind of fine, but you don't see many people that are good leavers putting a positive comment on a platform. So you've got to realise that it's normally just disgruntled people that put comments on platforms. So I'm never sure that's a great piece of research. The company, absolutely, their products, the sector they're in and their competitors. Going back to the points of difference between the company they're talking to and other organisations, the business leaders, their backgrounds, the interviewers, and try and see online if there are members of staff that have progressed significantly within organisations. It's always a great piece of research if you know that the organisation has got, a low attrition rate because they plan their employees' careers really well. So I think that's a good piece of research to do.
I think LinkedIn is awesome for that because you can actually see the progression of their career development on LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
But I just want to say thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate you taking the time out and actually, having this really nice conversation. And I'm sure it's going to help many people going through that transition at the moment.
I just want
to say, yeah, absolutely. Cool. But no, thank you so much, Stuart.
All right.
We'll definitely catch up soon.
All right, take care. Cheers, Vish.
Cheers, Stuart. Thanks.
Bye-bye.